Welcome back to a new video. I hope you had a great day. Let's take a look at some new r/malicious compliance stories, shall we? The first story is called $1,000 for a Stupid Demand. A few years ago I used to work in hospitality. I worked at a cafe as a casual. Now the owners, especially looking back, were all sorts of narcissistic. Sick and can't come in? That's okay, have the rest of the week off as punishment. Want a day off? Let me make your life hell for asking. Anyways, I worked on the till. I was the only one that rarely made mistakes and knew all the products off by heart, as well as a great memory for customers' names. As there were only 3 people that worked alongside me besides the 2 bosses each week, us 3 would rotate our cleaning. Week 1, dishes. Week 2, floors. Week 3, sandwich bar. We usually started to pack up around 2 PM and were to be out of there by 2:30 PM. As the dishes had to be hand washed when there were no customers, I would leave the till and do some dishes, continually checking if new customers came. And if so, I would stop what I was doing and greet them. Considering the wash was normally only between 12 and 1, I could get ahead of the dishes for the other girls after around 1 PM. Well, one day the owner, who really had no idea, decided he was going to work instead of sitting on the couch. So he comes in and stuffs up about 3 orders. Now, of course, being the type of person he is, it's not his fault and I'm blasted because I need to stay at the till. I try to explain that I'm there most of the time and I only leave to clear tables when I know everyone is seated and served. He goes on to say, "What part of stay at the till don't you understand?" Okay, no problem, I'll stay at the till for the next 2 weeks. I stayed at the till, I didn't move. Tables needed clearing, I stand there. Dishes piling up, I stand there. Some days I have no customers for an hour. I stand there. Well, as the dishes start piling up and no one can get there, we start getting out later and later, sometimes 3 PM, sometimes later. Now remember, we are all casual, so they have to pay us. He sits on the couch and watches as the other girls run around needing my help, but I look straight back at him and stand there. After about 2 weeks they didn't like the overtime and of course said, "Why are you not getting out on time? You shouldn't be this late." This is where I chime in. Well, if I was able to leave the till when we have no customers lined up, I could help them. The boss realized at this point that it was either admitting his fault or to get out his wallet. He agreed and I went back to my usual role of helping the girls and getting out on time. This costed them approximately $1,000 extra over 2 weeks. This makes me happy. The next story is called "That Leaves You with Just the Code." This happened about 3 years ago. I was working as a software developer for a smallish company owned by venture capitalists. I had been there for just over a year and a half. The work was difficult due to losing staff and a generally sloppy code base. It was originally outsourced to a company on the other side of the world that we couldn't contact or generally understand their logic. My notice period was 3 months, pretty standard for a company this size for my role. A rival decides we are small enough to purchase our company just to get their hands on our bespoke software. They go ahead and after a few weeks have acquired our company and are formally introduced as the new owners. Everyone is a bit uneasy due to the change, but are reassured that it will be at least 6 months before any changes are made. Our department is pretty happy with that. We are 3 developers, 2 business intelligence analysts, 1 tester and 1 system architecture engineer, all reporting to the CTO. No one expects anything bad, until one day we are all called into a meeting together with the new owners. They announce that they are looking to merge their IT department with ours and downsize them once they go. Here in the UK there's an official term called being placed at the risk of redundancy. Their IT department isn't too dissimilar to ours, 3 developers, 1 tester. We are all told that there are 3 positions available to the developers, 2 developer positions and 1 lead developer position. We are all allowed to apply for all of them, 1 of them or none of them. All of us brush up our CVs, go through the interviews and have all been looking for jobs elsewhere. All of the developers at our company decide that we want either the lead role or none at all. As unless we are getting the promotion, none of us really wants to work for the new owners anymore. Overall, half the staff would be gone by the end of the month. After a week goes by, we are invited back to find out our fate. At this point, they decide that my 2 colleagues are being let go, paid their notice and sent home on gardening leave. I'm offered the lead role with an unsatisfactory pay rise. I accept it and am given a document explaining the transition process. The new role is with the other company and starts the following Monday. There's a clause in the document saying I've got a 4-week period where both parties can decide it isn't working and leave on a week's notice. All seems fine, and I'm mostly relieved to have a job. It starts to sink in that I am going to end up dealing with the brunt of the development, while also trying to teach the 2 developers kept on from the other company what the codebase was like. I decide that I'm going to look elsewhere and end up getting a better offer working closer to home. I walk into the office the next Monday and ask to speak to my boss, the CTO. I hand him a letter informing him of my notice and that I'll be gone by the end of the week. He turns white as a ghost. All of the other developers from our company have already been paid off and their end of contracts processed. There was nothing they could do. They were out of developers that understood our code. The third story is called Office Pranks. Years ago, I worked at a place that didn't pay very well, but shenanigans helped make up for it. Few were immune to pranks, and even managers and the company president were known to punk the employees. One day, our manager was out of his office for something, so a couple of us quickly snuck into his office. Less than 30 seconds later, his chair was tucked back beneath his desk, minus the casters. Within a minute, we were back at our desk and earning our pitiful wages. The rush wasn't necessary, because it was nearly a half hour later that our manager came into our room. Alright, I know one of you took the wheels off my chair. We don't know what you are talking about, boss. There were 2 of us and they were casters. It was a room full of mechanical engineers and the manager was one too. The manager does the fish gulping thing at our denial for a moment. Well, someone did. I'm going into a client meeting, and when I come back in an hour, those wheels had better be back in there. Approximately 63 minutes later, he returns to the room to find all 5 casters back in their respective places, but the chair is gone. We hear heavy footsteps coming our way, whether from anger or the weight of responsibility, we don't know. We are of course dutifully working to earn our weekly paycheck and trying very hard not to look his way. We all know doing so will cause us to begin laughing. The manager sighs heavily. Okay guys, where's my chair? That tells us the client meeting went well, and it's the weight of being responsible for a group of such stellar and respectful employees. Otherwise, he would have been cursing, throwing things, and one of us would have won the pool on the vein on his forehead bursting. We all exchanged glances, communicating with nothing but our eyes, and take pity on the guy. We do rock paper scissors without looking away from our monitors or taking our fingers from the keyboard. Justin, not his real name, picks rocks, as always, and is beaten by 7 papers. Check the conference room, boss. When our manager enters the conference room, he finds his chair sitting in the center of the long table. His head drops, his fingers pinch the bridge of his nose, and he begins counting to 10. He made it to 4. He screams in frustration. He takes his chair from the table, brings it back to his office and shuts the door. The rest of the day was quite peaceful. Actually, it was the next afternoon before he spoke to any of us. We know this last part because one of our people in purchasing sits next to the meeting room and emailed all of us his reaction. The last story is called You Are Not Here to Think. About a decade ago, I was a new guy at the company. We have people fly in from all over the world to start putting gear together before leaving again for job sites. And one of the things I did in my earlier days was pick those people up from the airport, take them to their hotel after work and such. I picked a guy up who's going to be my boss on an upcoming job. The airport is about an hour from our HQ and hotel if you take the highway and main roads. When I meet him at the airport, he makes a request that I follow the directions on this awesome new GPS app that he's got on his phone. He swears it finds the absolute fastest routes. I'm paid by the hour and I'm the new guy, so sure, no problem. It ends up taking almost 25% longer than the main roads would have, but I'm not bothered. The next day, I'm asked to take him to his hotel. It's a straight shot, a few miles down the road, but the road is always stop and go at rush hour. I make a turn off the road almost immediately in order to take a route that I know is faster. He starts giving me a gentle amount of grief about not listening to his magical GPS app. I got him to the hotel in great time, but he still just won't stop insisting that the main road, which we could see was backed up, would have been faster. Okay, fine. A couple of days later, we drove a few hours to our primary job site. The trip is fine, I follow his magic app and we arrived without incident. It is the largest job I've done so far, and I admittedly stumbled with a little bit of it. The boss tries to give me a pep talk at the end of day 1, but fails miserably. One of the critiques he gave me is, "You are not here to think." There are engineers on the job and there are techs. I'm just a tech, and I'm told I'm basically there to do the grunt work aspect and just listen to what people like him tell me to do. Pretty demoralizing lecture, honestly, but I take it to heart. Once the event is over, it's my job to take the boss man back to the airport, which I'd like to remind you at this point is in the city I live in and not where he is from. We are running a little later than I would prefer to, but he's the kind of guy who would rather get to the airport 15 minutes before his flight boards. And, as always, we are using his GPS, which he is still raving about. I don't know if the dude's friend invented the app or something, but he is just seriously fawning over it. Well, we approach what I know is the exit to the airport, but the app says to stay on the highway and take the next exit in a mile or two. So I follow the app, having learned my lesson from the boss. And soon we are stopped dead in a tight single-lane construction zone. The boss realizes this and starts to panic. And then starts asking if I am sure I took the right route. The exit I would normally take for the airport was a little way back, but the GPS said to keep going. "You went past the exit for the airport?" His voice is raised, but not shouting. "I went past an exit for the airport," I calmly replied. "I'm sure this one will get us there, but with the speed traffic is moving, I don't know if we'll make your flight. It's already a pretty tight connection." He shouted at me this time. "What were you thinking?" Since the car was stopped dead, I turned my head so I could meet his eyes and very blankly said, "I'm not here to think." If Uber had existed there at the time, I think he would have gotten out of the car with his bag and called for a ride. As it is, I spent the rest of the trip listening to him yell at some poor airline agent about getting his flight rebooked, since it was at this point that he wasn't going to get there in time. And the thing is, this really wasn't even malicious on my end. I was just too timid to rock the boat anymore, so I was doing things exactly as I was told. Not my fault that it bit him in the end. Thanks for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please consider subscribing to the channel for more content. Let me know what you think about the stories in the comment section below. Have a great day. Bye bye.